good examples of how to do that. We're sitting in Brazil. Up until this year, Brazil was doing very well in leveraging resource rents toward research and innovation through its sectoral funds. They serve as a very good model for African countries to follow. And the last one, I'll just say something about South Africa. I think you know much of the story. Largest economy in Africa, 15th largest securities exchange. I spoke about the services role, FDI. It's a leading S&T actor in Africa. The training role of the universities, very strong role in G20, NEPAD, African Union. It's foreign relations, that's a story in its own right. It's very difficult to describe South African foreign relations in terms of a logical process that is holding it together. And I came up with the idea of referring to it as dubious pragmatism, very strongly driven by its relationship with China. In other words, it has shifted from a strong human rights drive in foreign policy to what I call pragmatism. In other words, keep quiet and let things go on in the marketplace. And I think I am done. Thank you.
Michael, 80.
So good evening. I'm very glad to be here.
One more.
So good evening. I'm very glad to be here and to participate in this symposium. When I entered the university, many of my colleagues, elder and more experienced, they used to explain to me that if I would like to be a good scholar, I should be skeptical. I really am not sure if I'm a good scholar, but I became very skeptical. So, this is a brief introduction to explain some points I brought to this panel. First of all, I don't think BRICS is a group. It's not really a group. It's still what we can say has a process in the making. And I understand that exercises, meetings like this, is very important in this process of building something more similar, more close to something that we understand as a group. So perhaps in the future, I hope in the near future, this group of countries become really a group in international arena. So, another point is I would like to recover the concept which are quite familiar for those who study international relations. Is the concept of anarchy. That means anarchy is seems that a very central concept to understand this sort of idea of organizing groups, G20, G7, G4, 5 or so. And also to think that countries have some kind of role to play in the international arena. I think this is a concept very important because we have many examples along the history in which countries that we thought they were considered as sharing a sort of a strategic alliance. And what happened is when facing some kind of problem, well, they do not behave like allied. In the case of the United States, for example, before the Second World War, well, there was a strong alliance with Britain, with France, with Western Europe as well. But the US entered the war only when the Japanese attacked Pearl Harbor. It was quite decisive. That means 3 years later, the war had started in '39. Very recently, we had another case which seems to me very illustrative, very instructive, is the case of France. When the embassy of the United States was really hijacked in Tehran for a whole year. And what the United States did with a sort of moral support of the international community was to put some kind of barriers on economic barriers, basically, as a form to press Iran to release the American embassy. And what happened when the Americans took it this way? France more than doubled exports to Iran. So they were members of the Atlantic, and the NATO, so that's the meaning. What I'm trying to say, that the international anarchy or the system, international system, always has this kind of very strong trace, which is the anarchy. So it's I don't think we should think that BRICS or any other kind of group could behave or could build a sort of block to manage to operate or to face international problems in some way. So, along these panels, the previous panels, and also in this particular panel, we could observe that what comes like flashing lights from the exposition is the differences. There are lots of differences of the countries, the 5 countries forming the BRICS, rather than something that could be homogeneous or something that we could find to share objectives and to share perspectives in the world scenery. So this takes me to the other point. That means what kind of role we should expect that these different countries could play in the world system. I think that it will depend basically on each country, what the government of India, or China, or Brazil is going to do in the coming years. This is going to be very decisive. And I have some figures which shows both aspects. First, the size, the importance, the different importance. I think it's not necessary. Other panels have already stressed the geopolitical situation of each country. But, for example, export to China from Brazil in 2012 was $41 billion. Export to India, 5.6. And to Russia, 3.2, and to South Africa, 1.2. 0.8. That means our perspectives are very different. On the other side, if we take the problem of what the country is doing, what China is doing, what South Africa is doing, what Brazil is doing, so we could take another set of figures. Korea, for example, invested 27.7% of the GDP in the has investment to development of Korea in 2012. India, 34.9. China, 46.9. Brazil, 17.7. So it's quite ridiculous. So it's not expected that in the near future we are going to move to change significantly the position we are now. I mean, this is only to throw some light in terms of the short-term perspective. So the other point is, I think it would be important, is what kind of investment we are doing. If you compare, for example, Brazil to Germany, Germany territory is 20 times smaller than Brazil. And the railroad network has 41,000 kilometers of railroad. And you know, in the very German standard, everything works in a Prussian way, I mean. And in Brazil, we have 28,000 kilometers. And our territory is 20 times bigger than Germany. And we all Brazilians, we know what happened with our railroad system. So we are putting, we are not investing that much in terms of the future. If you look at China, so the difference is really astonishing. And if we go to perhaps to the topic of the next